Belinda Agnew, brand ambassador of Women in Tech and obsessor of all things startup and entrepreneurship. She's the co-partner of X-Enabler as well as the host of Startup and Unicorns. Today, I'm chatting with Belinda. Let's talk about truth. You shared something with me when we were speaking privately, and it was about a lot of people not being truthful, about showing themselves in a certain light online or, in their corporate or business space, and behind the scenes, they're a different person.
Yeah. So you mean like authenticity is like an overused word at the moment, but I feel like we were literally just talking about this in the previous podcast I had, is that the more truth you show, or the more truth you show in the world, or the more authenticity you show as an individual, I feel like you create better opportunities, because I feel as though when people are not truthful or authentic, they're creating opportunities that isn't necessarily for them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like if you are yourself, authentic self, truthful to yourself, because obviously lying to yourself isn't creating the best opportunities, let's face it. But if you're truthful to yourself, you're creating not only the right opportunities to you, but the right relationships to help you grow with the authentic self versus the fake self. So I feel like a lot of people, not just in business but in personal life, don't necessarily show up as their true self. And I think that stems from, you would know this better than me, from trauma and insecurities and projecting and things like that. So I think a lot of people that I meet in corporate haven't necessarily done a lot of inner work or got to really know who they are as a person to be able to show up in a world of truth, right? So because we're all fearful of it.
Yeah.
It's like,
and do you see that more with men or
like
women?
Me? Both.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, both. I think if I was to look at it as a male and a female thing, I would definitely say men are better at lying. But women are not as good at lying as men. But I would say they're probably quite equal, but you wouldn't necessarily know because men are so good at lying.
Yeah. And
So
and when you say
really
that, like, we laughed at the same time, and it's not like a secret little joke, but I think, that is part of a man's power, is to inflate themselves. It's like the peacock or the alpha male, and what is truth? It's like when a man looks into the mirror, generally they see a slightly more inflated version of themselves, whereas women are conditioned to take the attention off themselves, right? So whether it's in their work or, in how much space they take up, it's a really different conditioning. And I think it's also biological within us. And that can be, a positive thing or a negative thing. But I remember one of the things you shared was some prominent people, whether, it's in the business world or, famous people who, message you, slip into your DMs, and they're married. So, and, I think that's a really important thing to know, because the more success you have in life, and especially as men, as they start to make more money, it doesn't necessarily mean that their personal life is improving. Sometimes it can go in the completely opposite direction.
I think, when you said that, a lot of men, actually, quite relevant now to this topic. I was reading a tweet. A guy had tweeted something. He said, when men make money, all they want to do is take care of the woman and take care of the home. But when women make money, all they want to do is be independent and be on their own. And I was like, this is so not true. Like, I remember when I first made money, the first thing I did was bought my mum a car. And I gave my mum a credit card and an allowance to help out with her daily expenses or whatever. And somebody tweeted after that, a woman, she was a relationship coach, and she said, it's funny that you say these things because I actually see the world a little bit different. A lot of my clients are men, and we speak about this often, and successful men, $1 million, billion-dollar status. And a lot of the times men that make a lot of money unfortunately end up with a divorce or a side mistress or cheating and escorts and all these types of things because they have opportunity. And unfortunately, women are attracted to successful men with a lot of money and status because that's what we like. And it's really easy for them to just go and meet a new woman, a younger woman.
Yeah,
So
it's easier, and it's resources, right? So even since we were hunters and gatherers, it's like the man who can acquire the most resources, and that could be money. It could be social resources.
Yeah.
It could be friends, acquaintances, whatever it is, or, food. So I think that's not even just a conditioning thing. I think it's something biologically programmed within us, and also probably a little bit biologically programmed in men. But however, I think that's where the internal compass gets lost, because I think a lot of people with success, especially men, they lose themselves as well, and it creates stress.
Totally.
And a way to relieve stress is not necessarily to go back home to your wife who's seen you at your worst, but to be admired by someone new, right? To get that applause.
There was a guy that is quite a huge status here in Australia, and I will never forget the conversation we had. And he said something that literally stuck out like a sore thumb. He said, Belinda, why do you think successful men have many supercars? And I was like, because they like supercars and they can. And he's like, it's like women. Like, if I have a Ferrari, it's not enough. I want a Maserati. If I have a Maserati, it's not enough. I want a Bentley and I want a Tesla and I want this type of car. And it's like women, like one woman isn't enough when you get to that certain status. It's like, I want, a younger woman, an older woman, a mid-level woman, a different type of woman. We never are satisfied or content. And that's why we drive different cars throughout the week, because we get bored.
Wow. And do you think, I guess,
this is so crazy.
Yeah, no. And I think it's really disheartening, especially if you are a successful woman and you're sort of, I guess, have insights to all of this, and you're in a stage where you're looking for the right person. It can even sort of put you off relationships because you don't need a man anymore. You want one. But seeing someone who is successful and act in this way, do you think it sort of made your dating life or relationships more complicated?
Oh, totally. Like, I think, the problem with me is it's not that I don't have opportunity. I have plenty of opportunity. It's and even like I have the most amazing men around me. They're not necessarily as crazy as what I explained to you.
Yeah.
But it's
Thank
just
goodness.
it's not settling, right? So I feel like I've worked so hard in my life, and for me to settle for just something that's mediocre or basic, it just kind of dims my light. It's like, well, why have you worked so hard to get where you are? Like, why are you not working so hard to have the guy that you desire, right? Or want? Not necessarily need. So I think for me, I'm just really not waiting, but, trying to do more inner work, be more self-aware to attract the right person in my life. I think it all starts from yourself first, because you're always going to fall into the same patterns otherwise. So I think it's kind of one of those things, but definitely don't want to settle.
Yeah. And like this word settling, right? No one wants to settle, especially when you've lifted your life to such a high level, and you came from a difficult upbringing and you've created a lot. You've created businesses, you've elevated your life, you've developed yourself. So this idea, I guess, like, I can resonate with you as well, is bringing someone into your life who's not just giving you something, who's not providing a life for you, but they might actually take away from that life, is also scary. So do you think a little bit of that is fear? Because in a sense, no matter who we meet, they can change in a year. They can change when we move in with them. We don't know where life is going to take us. So do you think it creates a little bit of a barrier to connection?
You mean having fear that you don't know what the outcome will be?
Yeah, kind of like in the business sense, there are things you can control, right?
Yeah.
In the material world. In relationships, there is less control. And I also do notice with a lot of successful women, externally successful and who have a lot of options, there's like this fear of intimacy because the need is no longer there, right?
Got it.
And we don't have to necessarily work with that anymore because the man doesn't have to put a roof over our heads. He doesn't have to support us.
I get what you're asking. So this is where I'm completely opposite, which is like quite interesting. So I speak about this a lot on social media and people still don't understand. They're like, but how can you have traditional values when you're not a traditional woman yourself? You are in the corporate space, you make your own money and things like that. So I think in my personal life, I desire a traditional man. And what that means is I want a man to provide for me and provide safety and provide for my home and the family. And that means emotionally and financially. Yeah. So just because I'm independent and I make my own money, it doesn't necessarily mean I don't want a provider. I definitely want a provider. I definitely want a person to provide for me, for my family. And that is at a certain level, not as necessarily aligned, but needs to be much larger than I am in life. Because I think every woman, to be submissive and feminine, they need somebody to lead and guide and trust and feel safe and protected and all those things that women need. So I think for me, I definitely want a traditional man for sure.
Yeah. And I don't think you're alone in that. I think the more powerful a woman is, whether it's in her external appearance, whether it's in her confidence or, the success that she's building externally, the more powerful she is, she wants a stronger man, right? And that's the masculine, feminine balance. And really that's actually why I coach men, not women. The principles remain the same, but I believe that the man is the leader. He creates the container. Right. And for the relationship to work, it's very hard for a woman to direct it because that's when it gets out of balance. So, yeah, I think it's not unusual what you want. I think that we all want the same deep down. And I think a lot of women are really scared to say that. Right. They're really scared to say, I want a man who's a provider. I want a man that creates safety. I want a man who makes me feel emotionally stable. Right.
It's true. And I think when I talk about that openly to certain men, they're very like, oh, but B, that's so like gold digger of you. And I'm like, can you please not say that word? Like that word does not exist in my vocabulary because I think men that say that women are gold diggers are men that cannot provide for women, in my opinion. And I think someone was saying it on a reel the other day. Broke men talk like that, not successful men. Successful men would never tell you that you're a gold digger, ever. They would never even talk about you wanting a relationship with me because of my money. Men that are successful don't say those things. They actually love giving the woman money. They love taking care of the woman. They love buying gifts. That's what successful men love to do.
Yeah, and it's also internally successful, right? Because I think a lot of men who use those phrases and, obviously there are women who are after a man to give them security.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's what marriage has been developed for. Marriage is about giving women security. It's been a business contract for many, many years.
But it's not even a contract. It's like playing your role. Like your role is, for a woman, our role is to keep the home good, take care of the babies, the family, be a good mother, be a good wife first. Second comes business. For a man, it's the other way around. So I think this is like where people have misalignment of, the roles that they need to play.
Yeah. And I think when people say these types of things, especially men, we kind of forget how different a man and a woman is. A woman is a portal for a child to come through. Our body opens up to create a child. There's so much strength. There's so much pain. There's so much that a woman has to use her body, her emotions for, where a man doesn't have to have that responsibility. So he does need another responsibility. And in essence, I know someone might throw tomatoes for me, at me for saying this, but that is a man's value. to provide that structure.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the truth. You're speaking the absolute truth. It is. And this is where people are so, torn and like, I don't necessarily like Andrew Tate as a person, but I respect his values and I respect what he preaches, because everything he says is the truth. It's the truth. The roles, the reason why God created us as women is to procreate. That's the truth. Like, for us to not have children, it's like you're going against what God created you for. So
yeah, look, I think
the same as men.
I think it's a choice. Andrew Tate is an interesting topic. I actually have not watched much from him, but somebody did ask me what I thought of him, so I thought I have to do some research. And at the time, I think he was in jail. They found him on some charges, but when I was watching his content, and a lot of what I do is intuition, and that's how I pick my guests. There's a level of intuition because there's a lot of interesting people out there. There's a lot of successful people. And what I got from Andrew Tate is he's a great marketer.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Just a great marketer.
The strategy he put together to create what he created is brilliant.
Yeah. So he's just using things that people will rev people up.
Totally.
Right.
But it's the truth.
And it's obviously working.
It's the truth.
And he's becoming a bit too powerful now. So he needs to be controlled, right, by the media or whoever it is.
Yeah.
But I think anything that really shakes people up like that, especially a guy who's talking about men's and women's roles, there's some truth in that, and maybe it triggers people.
Well, because it's extremely difficult for men, like 1% of men are actually successful in the world. Like, unfortunately, there's not many men out there that can provide for the home, that can, tell their wife or girlfriend to stop working and be a mom and stay at home and, still love your passion, do what you want, but you don't necessarily need to make money. I got you. And it's extremely difficult for a lot of men, and that's why everybody
and it's getting
gets
more
triggered.
difficult now,
yeah,
right? And women are in a way forced to go into the workforce, and it's causing a lot of problems within relationships.
Totally.
So essentially, the key problems that couples have, especially after long-term marriages, always comes down to the same thing, and it's the man no longer standing in his masculine. Right? Even if he's a director out in the world, even if he's has a big role, or he is quite masculine externally, in the home, he's stopped being masculine, right? And it sort of brings me back to these guys that you mentioned who are DMing you. It's like, it's like they're trying to regain a sense of power. Maybe they've lost that in the home, particularly if they're married, right? They're trying to step back into their masculinity. And I don't believe a man, I believe that people are naturally, not everyone is naturally monogamous, but I believe that's our evolution. That's a man stepping outside of his animal nature, right, and evolving. But this need for validation, it's because he's no longer being validated at home, right? And he needs to achieve, he needs more. But if he's actually able to stay in his masculine at home, right, and hold his frame at home, then I don't think there's necessarily that urge or that need for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I speak to a lot of men often, and this is like one major topic because it's like the topic I love to talk about at the moment.
Okay, good.
And it's relationships and the dynamics between a male and a female and how that plays out and why people get divorced and why isn't it working. Because a lot of these married men are in my DMs and not just like once off, like for years, like they've been trying. This is like a ongoing thing, right? So I like to understand why that is and why that happens. And a lot of the times, a lot of the feedback I get from these men is I love my wife. My wife is incredible.
Yes, they always love their wife.
Don't know how I ended up with this beautiful angel. She's so good to me, such a good mother, like such an awesome woman. But I'm a man and I have needs. And if I see a beautiful woman, I have an urge to have desire for her, and I want to sleep with her, or I want some type of sexual relationship with her, or you know, even having time with her, you know, things like that. So I think a lot of the times men say they don't necessarily want to get a divorce and, you know, go to that girl. They just want a sexual relationship because men are logical creatures. They're not emotional like women. So they can just go and sleep with a woman and it's nothing for them. Whereas a woman is completely opposite.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to hormones. And I think these are guys who are high in testosterone on some level, especially if they have a level of success. And maybe they're too far on their masculine side. So it's out of balance and it's not in a healthy way. And actually, I do have some of these men reaching out to me in my DMs, but for different reasons. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. A lot of these men do want to change, right? You know, when they realize that maybe it's going to cost them their family, their wife, their assets, they realize that maybe something's off. And some of them really do want to change. And I guess generally what I hear, and this is not everyone, but a lot of these men, they feel like they're not getting the love and the validation that they need at home, right? You know, that's sort of the sad part of it. It all comes down to emotions, right? You know, because what's one body to another body for a man who's over the age of 30, right? I think if a man in his 40s who's sort of had some time being single, if he still needs to be with a million women, there's something wrong. It's like an addiction or a nervous reaction or a fear response because it's not evolution, right? He's not evolving.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. I've never really thought of like the age thing, but these men that I'm talking about, mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s is kind of the age. Yeah, no, it's interesting. But, you know, I think there's still hope. I do believe that, you know, a man can be successful out in the world and still be loyal and faithful. I feel those two can come together, but I think society paints it in this way that success is having a lot of women. It's kind of like these false idols, right? And I also do notice with a lot of men who are quite good looking, right? So they don't have to really work for women. Women come to them. They don't actually want to sleep with a lot of women. Really?
Yes, it's quite interesting. And I've had a few clients like this younger men who their sex drive has completely fallen away. They're good looking, they're fit, they're always at the gym, but their testosterone is low. And I believe that's going to happen a lot with the younger generation because men are grooming themselves more. They're taking care of themselves more and women are becoming more powerful. So the next generation of women, they're all going to be working. Women work harder. And then this is sort of the facts. They work harder. They take more direction. So there's going to be a generation of really strong, successful women and men who don't know how to pursue women, right? So their drive is going to lower because, you know, a man needs to hunt. Otherwise, he doesn't get that attraction.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and he might need to even hunt outside so he can come home to his wife and feel attracted sometimes. So I think it's a really complicated.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right.
There you go.
Yeah. And yeah, let's chat a little bit about, you know, childhood and how that sort of affects our relationships, because I've definitely noticed it, you know, as I've had many relationships, long-term relationships. As I started to do this work, I started to look back and look at my childhood and notice how the men that I was attracting were initially completely the opposite to my father, but then they were completely the same, some of them. So there were always these key characteristics that I was almost trying to fulfill. And I know that you grew up with a single mum. So how do you think that impacted your relationships?
Well, I think your surroundings will forever impact you. I think, you know, you eventually get programmed and wired to your surroundings. So you know, if you live with your parents and have a long-standing relationship, living with family for so long, you're obviously going to be wired in their environment. because obviously you're not independent enough to stand on your own 2 feet. So you're obviously going to become like them eventually. But, you know, for me, I was lucky enough to leave home at a really young age. So I left home at 16.
Yeah. I love how you phrase it that way. You were lucky enough, because I think people in Australia stay at home for so long and it does them a disservice.
Yeah, it does. It does. It really, because everything in life is energy, right? So I think the sooner you realize that, the sooner you will be able to grow into your authentic self. So I think when I say lucky enough, not that my mother was a bad person. She's an incredible mother and I love her so much, and our relationship has evolved over time, and we're in a much better situation. But what I mean by that is I was lucky enough to fail and fall on my ass and, you know, go through these crazy experiences at such a young age that people go through in their 20s. I went through them in my teens. So I think it gave me an upper hand in life and in my career and all of that. So I was definitely lucky enough to leave at an early age, learn a ton, experience a ton, be around crazy people, different personalities, which in turn I didn't really become like my mother, but similar things do pop out here and there. I'm like, wow, this is my mom. This is how my mom would react in a relationship. This is how she treats her partners.
Pop out during stress or in relationships? Where do you see, you know, your mom come out most in you?
In my personal relationships, yes. For sure. But in my like work life and everything, that was all created by me. So I think it's nothing to do with my mother, but personal life, it does come out sometimes. So, I think your upbringing is really a huge thing. I think it's like the age 6 years old onwards is kind of like really 6 to 11, is it?
It's 0 to 7 where it's like we're like a sponge. So we get all of our conditioning.
Oh, okay.
But there are some theories the next 7 years. So, you know, that's when we're in adolescence. But from my knowing, you know, we get our rules about this world. You know, we come onto a new planet from wherever we came from, and we're just learning how to survive. So with a lot of people, they're still using the survival skills that they used before the age of 7, right? Because that kept them safe. And that could have been being the funny one, being the strong one, being the responsible one. I know for myself, it was to, in a way, placate my parents' emotions, right? Because I had quite a lot of chaos and surprise, surprise, this is what I'm doing today. I'm dealing with people's emotions. And I think some days you just wake up and you think, shit, this is a product of my childhood. And you kind of realize how little control you have in some ways of these areas of your life, because your subconscious is controlling a lot of this.
Yeah. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah. Isn't it?
You can't stop. And if you stop, it's like meditating. I remember when I started meditating and I stopped, it's like everything just came back.
Yes.
It's like I didn't even do the work. I was like, what? Like, what is happening? So it's like ongoing. I
love that you said that. That's what I tell my clients all the time, because I think everyone needs to meditate. It's like if you never brush your teeth, you're going to tell that person, here's a toothbrush, brush your teeth, right?
Totally.
And you don't realize what it does until you do it for a while and you stop. Yeah. So what did meditation add to your life?
So I did it for a bit and then I stopped because I feel like I'm self-diagnosed ADHD. Like I can't sit still. And I am an overthinker. So I overthink everything in my brain, not out loud, before I make decisions. And it helped me calm and be more present and make better decisions before I would kind of just like blurt it out. I'm a very blunt person in general, but I would be worse. I just like blurt everything without even thinking about what I'm saying. But now I just started to meditate again, and I'm going through a whole coaching program with the meditation coach.
Yeah, beautiful.
And like life coach. He's like incredible. And it's like a group of us. It's like 9 women, all different types of age and, you know, the time in their life as well. So yeah, it's super interesting. And I think meditation, self-work, speaking to a coach, having a coach is so important. And a lot of people think it's fluff and like, why do you need a coach? Like, just go talk to your friends and I'm like,
it's like the blind leading the blind with our friends, right?
Yeah.
In many ways, because, I grew up with people from my same culture, same background, doing the same thing. And I think coaching is just the best thing because it expands your mind of what's possible.
Totally. And you just get to know yourself so much more as a person. I think ongoing coaching is really, really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions to close our show together. So the first question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Buy Bitcoin. No, I'm kidding.
At what time?
It was the first thing that came to my head. I would say, like, seriously, would say, everything in life is going to be okay. You just need to go through it and believe in God, trust in God. He will guide you, but ultimately it's your choice. So you need to make choices. He can guide you to the places, but you need to make those choices. So wherever you are in your life, it's based on the choices you've made. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like even if my younger self heard that advice, it would just create much more enjoyment in the process.
Yeah,
right?
Just enjoy.
Yeah.
Life's so short.
So short. So short.
Don't take life seriously.
We don't realize how short it is. But anyway, next question. So we've spoken about men. We've spoken about the dating world. What would you want men to hear, either who are dating or in relationships? What would you want them to know that might provide them, I'm not going to say advice, but a woman's perspective to, help them improve themselves?
I think it depends on what type of woman, first of all, you're trying to attract. Like, if you're a beta, then you need to, aim for alpha and then alpha woman. But if you're an alpha man, you obviously want a beta. So I think, know what type of woman you want and what comes with that. I think a lot of men say to me or, say out loud, I love independent women and I love that they're on their, path and, they're successful and they have their own money and they're, they have direction in their life and they're not, all over the place. But when it comes to it, they're like, holy shit, I did not sign up for this. You are way too independent. You are way overpowering. So I think just figure out what kind of woman you want and what that comes with. And I think lastly, women love status and love a provider. So if you can't provide status or providing in emotionally or financially, it's going to be very difficult to land a woman to be with you for life.
Yeah, and
in my opinion.
Look, I don't agree with there's the top of the top, but not everyone's going to be there. But I think for each man's range, they need to provide that level of security and stability, right? Where they're at. And even if they're in a marriage right now, and they've always been the provider, there's still emotional security to provide, right? There's still physical security.
Totally.
So what a woman always wants is safety and security. And I think that's 100% spot on. And not a lot of women will directly say that. So thank you. And final question, just to finish it off, what are you excited right now in your life? What's sort of giving you that get up and go? And what are you looking forward to?
Oh my God, there's so much I'm looking forward to. I think life's I feel like I have such a long life to live and I'm still really young and I am excited to learn, experience, grow, get to know myself. I booked a flight one way to go to Dubai, then Europe, and I don't know when I'm coming back. So I'm excited about
exciting.
that. Yeah.
So you're stepping into the unknown.
Yeah. Love a challenge.
Letting go of control.
Yeah, on my own. So that should be fun. I'm excited about that. And I think what I'm excited about the most is I don't fully know myself. And I'm so excited to get to know her fully.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be exciting.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of women also don't have that excitement to connect with themselves, right? Because they're looking for it externally. But really, at the end of the day, all we have is this relationship with ourselves.
Totally.
And yes, we want a man. We need a man. But the other thing is sometimes we have the most fun with our girlfriends. We don't realize how good it is and how good it feels. And it's a chemical, it's oxytocin that we share together, is when we're with other women.
Totally.
And we can only create that connection if a woman is fulfilled within herself.
Totally.
So thank you so much for joining me. You're definitely one of those women, and look forward to chatting soon.
Thank you so much for having me.